Trending tonight, the federal government has predicted heavy rains and floods in 30 states and the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, Abuja. The high flood risk states include Abia, Adamawa, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Bauchi, Bayelsa, Benue, Borno, Cross River, Delta, Ebonyi, Edo, Gombe, Imo, Jigawa, Kebbi, and Kogi. Others are Kwara, Lagos, Nasarawa, Niger, Ogun, Ondo, Osun, Oyo, Rivers, Sokoto, Taraba, Yobe, Zamfara, and the Federal Capital Territory. The Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation, Joseph Utsev, stated this during the public presentation of the 2025 Annual Flood Outlook by the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, NEHISA, in Abuja on Thursday. Utsev stated that coastal and riverine flooding would be experienced in some parts of the South-South geopolitical zone of the country due to a rise in sea level. He listed the coastal states to include Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, and Rivers, while Akwa Ibom and Edo fall under the high flood risk states. The 2025 Annual Flood Outlook AFO was segmented into three parts to address the present challenges of flood disasters and provide information for mitigation, especially in the most vulnerable communities. The minister disclosed that flooding remained one of the most devastating natural disasters in Nigeria, with climate change accelerating its frequency and severity. He revealed that 1,249 communities in 176 local government areas across 30 states and the FCT fall within the high-risk flood zones this year, while an additional 2,187 communities in 293 council areas face moderate flood risks. Also trending tonight, the Federal High Court in Abuja on Thursday struck out a 50 billion naira suit filed by Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the proscribed Indigenous People of Biafra IPOB, against the federal government. Justice Inyang in a ruling struck out the suit for lack of diligent prosecution. When the matter was called on Thursday, neither Kanu nor the federal government was represented by any lawyer. The judge, who said the case had taken 3 adjournments due to non-representation, consequently struck out the case. Kanu has sued the federal government of Nigeria and the Attorney General of the Federation, AGF, as first and second defendants over allegations bordering on violation of his rights, alleging that he was kidnapped from Kenya and brought back to Nigeria to stand trial. He wanted the court to determine whether the way and manner in which he was abducted in Kenya and extraordinarily rendition to Nigeria is consistent with extant laws, asking the court to award the sum of 100 million naira to him as the cost of his action. Trending tonight too is the story that the Director General of the World Trade Organization, WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, says the US-China tariff war could reduce trade in goods between the two economic giants by 80%, pulling down the rest of the world economy. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala said in a statement that the escalating trade tensions between the two world powers posed a significant risk of a sharp contradiction in bilateral trade. He said the United States and China together accounted for 3% of world trade and warned that the conflict could severely damage the global economic outlook. Okonjo-Iweala warned that the world economy risked breaking into two blocks, one centered around the United States and the other China, which he said could lead to a long-term reduction in global real GDP by nearly 7%. She urged all WTO members to address the challenge through cooperation and dialogue. Hours earlier, Trump ramped up duties on Chinese goods to 104%, only to hike them further when China retaliated by raising tariffs on U.S. imports to 84%. In a social media post announcing the moves, Trump said China had been singled out for special treatment because of the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets. And finally, trending tonight, China says it does not want a trade war but will not fear it if the United States continues its tariff threats, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said on Thursday. China will not sit back and let the legitimate rights and interests of the Chinese people be deprived, ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said at a regular news conference.
The United States is still imposing tariffs on China, and China is firmly opposed to such bullying. China will absolutely not accept pressure, threats, and blackmail. That is not the right way to deal with China. If the US side really wants to talk, it should show an attitude of equality, respect, and reciprocity. If the United States ignores the interests of the two countries and the international community and insists on fighting a tariff war and a trade war, China will certainly accompany it to the end. The United States, driven by selfish interests, has weaponized tariffs as a means of exerting maximum pressure and seeking unilateral benefits. This severely infringes upon the legitimate rights and interests of other countries, constitutes a grave violation of World Trade Organization rules, seriously undermines the rules-based multilateral trading system, and poses a major threat to the stability of the global economic order. It is a blatant act that defies international norms and runs counter to the entire world. Taking necessary countermeasures against the United States' bullying practices is not only to safeguard our own sovereignty, security, and development interests, but also to uphold international fairness and justice, defend the multilateral trading system, and protect the common interests of the international community. Those who uphold justice will receive broad support, while those who go against it will find themselves isolated. The US's reckless and unjust actions go against the will of the people and are doomed to fail in the end. I want to reiterate that in a tariff war or trade war, there are no winners. China does not want a trade war, but we are not afraid of one. We will never stand by and watch the legitimate rights and interests of the Chinese people be undermined, nor will we allow international trade rules and the multilateral trading system to be trampled upon. If the United States insists on waging a tariff war or trade war, China will fight to the end. By placing its own interests above the common good of the international community and sacrificing the legitimate rights and interests of countries around the world to serve its hegemonic agenda, the United States is bound to face even stronger opposition from the international community.
And those were the trending stories tonight. We'll take a break. When we return, I'll serve you Nkem O or Sophia whole and entire. Don't go away.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.